NHL All-Star MVP, John Scott!
What if the worst player in the NHL became the MVP of its biggest showcase? Sounds impossible, right? But that's exactly what happened. This is the story of John Scott, a player known more for throwing punches than scoring goals, who somehow became the face of the NHL All-Star Game. A story so unbelievable, so heartwarming, and so controversial that even the league itself tried to bury it. But what the NHL didn't realize is that they had just ignited a fan rebellion, one that would end in chants of MVP, MVP, echoing across an arena as Scott's teammates lifted him on their shoulders in victory. This story took countless hours to research and put together, so if you want more hockey stories like this, make sure to subscribe. Now let's rewind to where it all began. John Scott wasn't born a hockey prodigy. He was born into a blue-collar family in the late 1980s, in a home where hockey was religion, but talent wasn't necessarily inherited. As a high school freshman, he stood 5 feet 9 inches, barely stood out on the ice, and certainly wasn't turning heads. Coaches and scouts didn't pay attention. Why would they? He was awkward on skates, played a physical game, but didn't dominate. Then something unexpected happened. A growth spurt. A big one. By the time he was a senior, Scott had shot up to 6 feet 8 inches, towering over everyone else. But this sudden growth didn't come with silky smooth skills or elite agility. Quite the opposite. It made him more awkward. His movements were uncoordinated. Scouts saw a giant body, but not much else. While future NHL stars were heading to major junior leagues, John took a different path. College hockey. He enrolled at Michigan Tech, not exactly a hockey powerhouse, and studied mechanical engineering in case the hockey dream failed. It wasn't plan B, it was plan A, because no NHL team drafted him. Nobody even whispered his name as a prospect. Despite being undrafted, Scott somehow clawed his way into professional hockey. In 2006, he signed a free agent contract with the Minnesota Wild, not because he was skilled, but because he could fight. From the start, his job was clear. His first NHL coach didn't sugarcoat it. You're not here to score, you're here because you're 6 feet 8 inches and you can throw punches. Don't try to be something you're not. Scott embraced that brutal reality. He bounced between the NHL and minor leagues, mostly watching from the press box. On the rare nights he dressed, he barely played. 4 minutes of ice time was a luxury. Media pundits mocked him relentlessly. One analyst said he had the skating ability of a shopping cart with a wobbly wheel. But while critics laughed, Scott quietly worked, and he never complained. In Chicago, he'd stay long after practice, doing basic skating drills with rookies 10 years younger. He knew exactly what people thought of him, and he didn't care. His value wasn't in goals, it was in protection. He was the guy who'd drop gloves in an instant if a teammate took a dirty hit. In 2012, that became crystal clear. Playing against the Vancouver Canucks, Scott witnessed a brutal, cheap shot. Without hesitation, he threw himself into the fray, taking on not one, not two, but 3 Canucks at once. That night cemented his rep. He wasn't skilled, but he was fearless. The numbers: 305 penalty minutes in a single season, 0 goals. That's not a typo. He'd be scratched if there wasn't another enforcer to fight. But when he was in the lineup, his presence changed everything. Ryan Miller, the Sabres goalie, once said, "Having John in our locker room changed how teams played against us. We could all play a little braver." And sometimes, Scott didn't even have to throw a punch. Just skating by the opposing bench and saying a few words to Brad Marchand was enough to make the chirping stop. Then came 2015. The NHL announced a new fan voting system for the All-Star Game. The rules were simple: vote for anyone, no filters. On a podcast, someone half-jokingly said, "Let's vote John Scott in." It was meant as a prank, but something about it resonated. Suddenly fans from every team, not just the Coyotes, started voting. Reddit threads blew up, Twitter campaigns spread like wildfire. Within weeks, Scott had more votes than Crosby, Ovechkin, and Kane combined. 500,000 votes. Then 1 million. The league panicked. This was supposed to be a glitzy showcase for marketable stars, not a goon with 5 career goals. They started pressuring Scott privately. An NHL rep called and asked, "Is this really good for your kids?" For the game. They hoped he'd walk away voluntarily, but Scott refused. Then the NHL got creative. Arizona suddenly traded him to Montreal, who instantly demoted him to the minors in Newfoundland. This made him ineligible for the All-Star Game. Problem solved, or so they thought. Outrage exploded online. ESPN's Scott Van Pelt called it one of the most cowardly things I've seen in sports. Hashtag Let Scott Play trended. Jeremy Roenick, who had mocked Scott's selection, reversed his stance and said, "What the league did to this man and his family is disgraceful." support flooded in. Celebrities like William Shatner and Alice Cooper publicly backed him. Fans threatened to boycott the game. Finally, under immense pressure, the NHL relented. Scott would captain the Pacific Division. When Scott arrived in Nashville, the atmosphere was surreal. Fans lined up outside his hotel. Players like PK Subban and Brent Burns welcomed him with humor and respect. In the skills competition, Scott clocked a 95.9 miles per hour slap shot, knee faster than Taylor Hall and Daniel Sedin. Even the league's top stars began gravitating toward him. Selfies, locker room jokes, genuine admiration. This wasn't just a joke anymore. It was real. The All-Star Game began. Scott stepped onto the ice. The crowd erupted. Chants of MVP, MVP thundered around the arena. 6 minutes in, Brent Burns set him up. Scott broke in and scored. Later, he added a second goal, deking through defenders and roofing it. Then came the moment, a staged fight with Patrick Kane, a player he had real history with. Instead of punches, they hugged. It was perfect. Scott's Pacific team won. He was lifted on teammates' shoulders. Wayne Gretzky announced him as MVP. In tears, Scott said, "I just want to thank the fans. You made this special for me." The NHL had to hand him the MVP trophy and car keys. On national TV, the next day, headlines read, "NHL's plan backfires. Enforcer gets last laugh. The people's champion." One quiet moment said it all. Scott, alone in the locker room, FaceTiming his daughters with tears in his eyes. The NHL quickly changed the voting rules the next year, adding a clause that players must be on an active NHL roster. It's now known as the John Scott Rule. Scott never played another NHL game, but his legacy reshaped how fans see underdogs, enforcers, and authenticity. For one weekend, he wasn't the goon. He wasn't the guy with 5 goals. He was a hockey player, living out every kid's dream, and it only happened because fans refused to let the league write the ending. So what do you think? Is this the greatest underdog story in NHL history? Let us know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, hit the like button and subscribe for more incredible stories just like this one's.